Hey guys, welcome back. For those of you watching, you'll notice that I am not in my usual environment. I'm actually in Marbella in Spain. I just got here from London, England, where I attended and presented at the Health Optimization Summit. And for those of you who are listening, you may notice that my audio is a little bit different than usual. Part of that may be because I'm sitting in a closet, and the other part of that is probably because I don't have a mic. So I trust that my trusty technical guy, Matthew, who lives in London, who's my audio and visual editor, is going to do everything in his power to improve the sound quality here. So today I was going to do a dive into Tudka, which is a bile acid that is, many people think of Tudka as being really important for the gallbladder and the liver, and they would not be wrong. It has a rich history in traditional Chinese medicine of being used for exactly that. But as it turns out, Tudka is actually really important for so many other aspects of health. And it kind of makes sense because as a bile acid, if it helps us to digest, break down, and absorb fats properly, it is also going to have a critical role in us being able to access, absorb, and therefore utilize fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. And we know that those four fat-soluble vitamins are critical to our health and every aspect of it. I mean, vitamin D3 is, I'm going to be doing a solo episode just on vitamin D3 in the next little while. I mean, vitamin D3, the list of benefits is endless and growing, from immune support, like anti-cancer, to bone health, to brain health, to like, there's literally reams and reams of studies on vitamin D3 that tell us that having healthy vitamin D3 levels is critical. And so we can get some vitamin D3 through diet. Ultimately, our best source of vitamin D3 is going to come from the sun, from UVB hitting the skin and being converted along with cholesterol. So you're going to have vitamin D, the sun rays hitting the skin, and we're going to get that conversion of vitamin D3 using cholesterol by the body and being converted to the active form of vitamin D3 that your body needs. But this isn't an episode about vitamin D3. Vitamin A is super important. Why? Because it's really important for the eyes. It's important for many, many other aspects, but this might explain why Tudka has benefits for the eyes as well as everything else. Vitamin K. Well, vitamin K is really important for our bone health. It's important for blood clotting. So being able to absorb vitamin K from the foods that we eat, wherever we can find it, is again going to be critically important. And if your gallbladder is not working properly, you can't digest and absorb these vitamins that are crucial to your health. So, the point of that little rant there is not to give you a sidebar to Tudka, but it's really to help us to understand that when we talk about a single element like Tudka, what we're really talking about is all of the downstream effects that element, getting that piece of the puzzle in place, will ultimately affect. And this is why, I'm always talking about what's the foundation? What are the first things we need to get into place before we start rolling around with the most, the more advanced stuff? So let's back up the bus a little bit and talk about Tudka and what it is, where it comes from, and a little bit about the background. So Tudka stands for toro orso deoxycholic acid. I like Tudka better because it's way easier to say. Now, notice that the word URSA, URSA, is in there. And that's because originally, I think that, well, actually, I don't know why they would have put URSO in the name, because we make small amounts of Tudka ourselves. But URSO is really, if you go back to the Latin root, it says, it means bear. And where practitioners in traditional Chinese medicine used to get their Tudka is literally from bears, from bear gallbladders, which, number one, is horrifying for the bear population, as you can only imagine. And number two, would be costly, expensive, and all those things. But more than anything, I think that slaughtering bears just for their gallbladder, for their bile, to extract this Tudka from them, is nothing short of horrifying. The good news is that we can get Tudka synthetically made now in a lab. it needs to be done properly. We need to make sure that it's high quality and well sourced. So you definitely, on your TUDCA supplements, you're going to want to look for certificates of analysis that gives you an indication that what you're buying is what you think you're buying, that it's clean, and that it's going to be safe and effective. And for something that is so important, I think that safety and efficiency, effectiveness we need to establish that, right? So many of you know that there's a couple of the companies that I'm affiliated with that carry TUDCA that I trust. And if you go to natnitum.com to the Nat Recommends page, you will find both those companies. I'm not going to talk about them right now. We'll put them in the show notes so that you can reference them if you want to. But I'm here to say, I'm not here to promote anybody's products. I'm here to tell you that TUDCA may be a critical piece of the puzzle in your health. I know it is for me, right? So I'll tell you a little bit about my story. And me and my gallbladder have we have a sad and yet very fortunate story together. Years and years ago, I was diagnosed with with rheumatic fever, which is what happens when the strep virus goes systemic in your system. It can be really dangerous. It can attack your heart and your organs. And so as a result, my doctor sent me in for an abdominal ultrasound. Now, if we go back a number of years before that, I had always had, this is long before I did what I do. I had a really tricky gut. Like I was prone to a lot of gut pain. I would talk about the little man that was scraping the insides of my stomach when I got very nervous. I had a lot of bloating in the lower right quadrant of my gut. I really, like, my stomach was really my weak point. And I called it my stomach because it was my abdomen. What I didn't realize is that I was walking around with a big giant gallstone in my gallbladder. Now, where I got really lucky here, and that's what they discovered on that ultrasound, where I got really lucky here is that the surgeon that my doctor sent me to see sat me down and explained to me that, yes, I have a gallstone, but that many, many people in this world take their gallstones with them to the grave. And so therefore, he was saying that I should not have my gallbladder removed, but I should rather go away and hope that my gallbladder doesn't act up. And my gallstone doesn't act up, and therefore I too could take my gallstone to the grave. Now, this was in some parts miraculous information because that means I got to keep my gallbladder. On the other hand, he might have, if he'd maybe been a little bit more enlightened, might have suggested that I start using TUDCA, because TUDCA is very helpful when we have gallstones. So how is that possible? So as a bile salt, what TUDCA does when we reintroduce it into the body is it improves bile flow because it helps to thin bile. And that is a big piece of the puzzle when we're trying to reduce the incidence and even the size of gallstones. So there's a study that was done pretty recently, took 70 people that had gallstones and gave them TUDCA every night for, I think it was 30 days. And through ultrasound, they measured their gallstones. And at the end of the 30 days, they measured the gallstones again. And guess what? Not only did they have a reduction in their symptoms, like their pain and their bloating, but all of these 70 people had smaller gallstones at the end of the study than they did at the beginning of the study. So this explains to me why when I take TUDCA, I feel so much better. So what it does is it improves bile flow. By improving bile flow, it also improves liver health. And by improving our liver health, which is, of course, we know the workhorse, the liver is the organ that is carrying the load in this toxic life that we live, because our liver is in charge of removing toxins, dealing with toxins. So giving the liver that beautiful flow of bile is going to be really helpful for the liver. And case in point, there are studies that show that when people take TUDCA, people who have elevated liver enzymes, which means that their liver is stressed, guess what? Those liver enzymes come down because that bile flow, that improved bile flow, the TUDCA, the bile acid, helps to take the pressure off the liver. And so the liver can work better. TUDCA also helps with the digestion of fats. Now, we talked about that a little bit earlier. So that means that if we're going to digest fats better, number one, we're going to feel better. You're not longer going to have to walk around saying that you're one of those people that, oh my God, I cannot break down fats. I can't eat fats. And the paradox here is that if you stop eating fat, your bile is going to get sludgier. right? So not eating fat is not the answer. Plus, if you cut fat completely out of your diet, even the good fats, then you're going to deny your body access to so many of these nutrients that we can only get through fat. So think omega 3s, think vitamin A, D, E, and K. Think about the components that your cells need, your cell membranes need to be healthy and flexible. We need healthy fat to function optimally. So we don't want to cut fat. We want to find the answer. How do we digest fat better? So if we're in a world where we've lost the ability to digest fat, there's a reasonably good chance that our gallbladders have taken a hit, and therefore the gallbladder and the liver together can no longer handle that fat. You might notice that your stools are greasy. So if you're leaving a greasy, sorry, that thumbs up thing, if you're leaving a greasy ring around the toilet, bad sign, means you're not breaking down fat properly. You need help with that fat digestion. TUDCA is going to come to the rescue here. It is going to help you. But what I will tell you is something that I have added to my TUDCA is ox bile, because ox bile also helps in the breakdown of fat. And it's got a whole bunch of elements to it that is helpful. So TUDCA and ox bile together help with fat breakdown. And I'm in the process now of really working on my liver health and my gallbladder health. So I'm taking both of those things with the third supplement, which I'll talk about in a little while. So it's going to help with the digestion of fats. It's going to help with the absorption of those fat-soluble vitamins. It's going to increase bile flow. It's going to support phase 3 detoxification in the liver. And it's going to help with bile duct integrity. Now, bile ducts, that's those little ducts that run from the bile into the liver. And it's stimulated, that bile flow is stimulated when we eat fat. So we need those bile ducts to be healthy and not kind of clogged up with that sludge, which is why, again, we want improved bile flow and we want thinner bile, right? So this is what's going to happen. So it's not like you're going to take TUDCA and you have perfectly healthy bile and it's going to turn into water. It's just that for those of us who have sludgy bile, like thicker bile, it's going to help it to flow better. And then you're less likely to get those bile ducts plugged. And if we know that if bile ducts get plugged, that's when things get really ugly. We want to make sure that the bile is flowing so that we don't get a backup in the liver. Now, the other interesting thing about bile is that it improves the degradation of cellular waste in mitochondria. And so it actually helps to protect the mitochondria. It helps mitochondrial health. And the liver is filled with mitochondria. Why? Because the liver is very busy. It's constantly detoxifying. So anything we can do to give more energy to the liver is going to be beneficial. TUDCA helps the mitochondria in the liver, and therefore it helps to increase the energy in the liver that is used and needed for the liver to do its job. It also has very beneficial effects on the microbiome, and that is partially because of better digestion. So undigested or partially digested foods is going to be a massive problem, both for your entire digestive tract. It's going to compromise the integrity of the gut lining, and it's also going to compromise the microbiome. So that bile acid is going to improve, because also it has antimicrobial benefits, is going to improve the health of the microbiome. Now, because it's antimicrobial, another benefit of taking TUDCA and having good bile is that the bile in the gallbladder is part of the mechanism of your body of clearing pathogens, including parasites. So when we have sludgy bile, which means we have stagnation of bile in the gallbladder, and that bile is not able to do its work because it's too thick and it doesn't work properly, very often this is where we can have the possibility of parasites hiding in the gallbladder and multiplying. This is not a good thing. So automatically, when you take TUDCA and it thins the bile and improves bile flow out of the gallbladder, it's going to help with dealing with those parasites and moving them out. Okay, so it has antimicrobial effects that is going to be both beneficial to the gallbladder because it's going to clear out those parasites and pathogens that might be hiding out in there. And it's also going to have those beneficial antimicrobial effects in the microbiome. Now, those of you who are sitting there and going, wait, antimicrobial microbiome, isn't that going to kill the healthy microbes in my microbiome? The answer to that is no. It has kind of selective benefits. It's not like it's an antibiotic. It actually is meant to live in the microbiome. It is meant to have a positive effect on the good bugs in your microbiome and a negative effect on the bad bugs. It's going to help to keep things balanced. Now, it's not like a probiotic, prebiotic, and that's all you need, but it's definitely a contributor to a healthy microbiome. There's animal studies that show that it has, so now I'm going to get really technical. It has beneficial for endoplasmic reticulum stress. Holy crap, what the hell is that? So endoplasmic reticulum is an organelle inside your cells. And when they get stressed, particularly, actually, it's an organelle inside your mitochondria. When they get stressed, terrible things happen. And I'm not going to get into the microbiology of this all. All I'm going to tell you is endoplasmic reticulum stress is a really bad thing, because that endoplasmic reticulum is responsible for making sure that your proteins are folded properly. And we know that misfolded proteins are proteins that are ultimately dysfunctional. They can't do their job. And guess what? We also know, those of you who've been listening to me speak for a long time know that misfolded proteins is one of the hallmarks of aging. So we definitely want to do whatever we can to support properly folded proteins. There's lots and lots of research going on as well with TUDCA, specifically around neurodegenerative diseases. There's lots of evidence that is pointing to the benefit of TUDCA for the protection of neurons. There's animal studies that are showing that it has benefits for breaking down plaque in the brain. There's studies going on with ALS, with Alzheimer's, with Parkinson's, with Huntington's disease. Like it's really interesting to me, actually, that as a basically natural element, there's so much research going on around TUDCA and these neurodegenerative diseases. So a lot of them are animal studies. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, if you've got neurodegenerative disease, you must go buy TUDCA because it's going to help you. But definitely, where there's smoke, there's fire. All the research right now is pointing towards benefits towards brain neurons and neuronal health by taking TUDCA. Does this mean you should be taking it all the time? I don't actually have the answer for that. I saw a study that went on for 6 months. They had people at 3 different dosages, 500 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams, and 1,500 milligrams a day. And they didn't really see any differences in terms of that study between the different people. So right now, it looks like 500 milligrams a day is probably enough. You don't need to go over that. Having said that, if you've got kind of gallbladder issues, what I would do is I would start at 250 milligrams, take that every night, and then gradually increase your dose. And if you get to 500 milligrams, you feel great. And at 1,000 milligrams, you still feel great. Go back to 500 milligrams. That's probably all you need. All right. Okay. So I'll review the dosing at the end of this episode. Here's another thing that TUDCA does. It inhibits scarring of the liver. So that's in liver cirrhosis, we get the fibrosis of the liver, which ultimately, if we have scars in the liver can't do its job. So it's going to support the liver. So if you have a history of drinking, it would probably be a great idea for you to do a run of TUDCA to kind of restore maybe some integrity to that liver. Now, bonus point if you're also using the liver bioregulator, because that liver bioregulator is also going to help with rejuvenation of the liver. So I know it's not TUDCA, but we're bioregulator central over here. So definitely I would recommend that if you're concerned about liver health and you're doing TUDCA, you might want to consider doing a few rounds of the liver bioregulator. All right, what have we talked about? We've talked about TUDCA being good for, obviously, the gallbladder, for liver health, for the brain health, for the eyes, because definitely through the pathway of vitamin A absorption. Vitamin A is critical for eye health, but probably through many other pathways at all. It is good for the microbiome. It plays a role in reducing pathogens and parasites in the gallbladder. What else? It increases bile flow up to 500%. That is amazing. Look at that. And it's like nothing. It's not a big deal. It's just this little TUDCA. It's just this little supplement that can do such amazing things simply by improving bile flow. and bile quality. I mentioned earlier that it protects mitochondria. I know I'm jumping around a little bit here. I apologize for that. But you know what? This is kind of like more of a flowy episode. And I just want to make sure that I get you all this information. So in terms of protecting mitochondria, remember we said earlier that it protects the mitochondria and liver. For those of you who are more more kind of granular about these things and want to dive in and aren't willing to take my word for it, or saying, well, how could it possibly protect mitochondria, be good for mitochondria in the liver? And this is because in the research they noticed that it reduces the release of a molecule called BAX, BAX. What BAX does is increases cell death in mitochondria. So it's going to, sorry about the thumbs up again. Sorry, guys. So ultimately, it's preventing the inappropriate, this isn't mitophagy, this is cell death in mitochondria. So it protects mitochondria from this BAX molecule. Also, when we talked about gut health, one of the other things that TUDCA does is it increases levels of tight junction molecules. So it helps, it can be part of your protocol when you're trying to improve the integrity of your gut. Like those tight junctions start to come apart a little bit. We know that BPC 157 can be helpful. We know that the tight junctions are very important in gut integrity. And so this TUDCA can actually increase levels of tight junction molecules to help and seal the gut. So it's going to be part of, it's not going to be your whole protocol, but it's going to contribute to helping to heal the gut. Okay, I've got some notes here that are helping me to stay on track. So in summary, taking TUDCA is an upstream way to improve energy levels, your digestion, particularly digestion of fats. It's going to improve skin health and the appearance of skin, because again, that fat from the inside is critical to the skin. Plus, if we're helping with detoxification of the liver, that too is ultimately going to have benefits for skin appearance and skin health. It can help with food tolerance, particularly fatty, rich foods, because it helps with that fat digestion and absorption. It can help to lower liver enzymes, and it's going to help with liver function. So if you're one of these people that kind of gets that lower right quadrant kind of bloating and pain, you may notice, because it's probably connected to the liver and the gallbladder, you may notice a reduction of that over time as you use this supplement. I don't think there's anything else here that I necessarily want to share with you. Oh, the one thing about the improvement in the intestinal barrier is that's based on a pig study. So we haven't necessarily tested this particular function yet in humans. So I think it's really important to take that into account, because just because it's showing a benefit in pigs doesn't necessarily mean that's going to translate to humans. But, there's so many other good reasons that are established in human health that I think it doesn't matter. It's still a really good supplement to think about. Even doing a 30 to 60 day cycle once or twice a year, just to preemptively support the gallbladder and the liver health. And how ironic is it that the gallbladder is considered in conventional medicine as a non-essential organ? How ridiculous is that? How ridiculous is the concept that Mother Nature would have given us an organ that is non-essential? I mean, I just even read a study about the appendix and how it is so critical to gut health. And maybe, down the road, if you guys are interested, let me know in the comments. I can do an episode talking about the appendix and its importance to gut health, because even though so many people think it's a disposable organ, we don't really need it, it turns out it's important as a reservoir for our healthy gut bugs. But I digress once again. I don't want to talk about the appendix. We're talking about the gallbladder. The gallbladder is important, and the number of people that are walking around without a gallbladder because it was just easier for their doctor to take it out than to think about how maybe they might save the gallbladder. And not to say that if you're having an attack and your gallbladder those ducts are blocked and you're in that excruciating pain, that's a point of no return, guys. The gallbladder does have to be removed because you could die for something like that. The point is, by using TUDCA, is it possible that we can avoid getting to that point? Okay. There's actually another interesting note for you is that having a gallbladder, having a well-functioning gallbladder may improve insulin resistance. And there was a study that was done that showed an association between people who didn't have a gallbladder and increased insulin resistant and metabolic disorders. So if there's anything we can do to preserve, protect, and keep our gallbladders, we need to do it, because nobody needs any help building insulin resistance. Again, this is an epidemic in our society, and this gallbladder association is a definitely, probably most likely, a piece of the puzzle. And it's not hard to imagine how or why. I mean, people are still working out the mechanism, but it turns out your liver is also really important for managing glucose and insulin resistance in the body. So, and we just talked about how bile flow supports the liver. And so anything we can do to support liver is ultimately going to support all of the things that the liver does. What else? Is there anything else? Natural antimicrobial. We've already talked about that. Okay, let's talk about how we might use TUDCA. So here's what I'm currently doing. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, I have a history of gallstones, I have a history of gallbladder pain, and I have a history of sluggish liver. Every traditional Chinese medicine doctor that I've ever seen has looked at me and told me that I have a sluggish liver, that I have a congested liver, right? And that's their way of expressing this problem. So not that my liver enzymes are necessarily high, but I've always considered that to be a sign to take care of my liver so that I don't end up with liver issues down the road. So what I'm currently doing is I'm taking a stack. I'm doing, I think I've been doing it for a month. I'm going to keep going for another month. And what I've been doing is I've been doing a liver support supplement. So I've been using the liver complex from a company called Level Up Health. Now, there are other really good liver supports out there. This is not a glorified ad for any one company, but this is my protocol. Okay. So I'm using the liver complex. I'm using TUDCA. And it just so happens that I had those two from the same company. So I'm using both. You all know that I trust this company, but for those of you who want to order from an American company, the Body Bio also makes a great TUDCA supplement, very high quality, very clean. But what I'm doing is I'm taking 2 liver complex, 1 TUDCA, which is, I think it's 250 milligrams. I'm actually about to increase that to 500 milligrams. So I'm probably going to be taking 2. And I'm also adding ox bile, because ox bile is also critical to this whole pyramid. And I'm taking it at night before bed, because bedtime, when you're sleeping, is when your liver's doing a lot of its work. It's doing a lot of cleanup. And I'm noticing that I'm feeling much better. I'm feeling all those things I was talking about. My sleep is actually improved. Like, my sleep quality has improved. My HRV is holding at a really nice level. Like, before I got the flu a couple of weeks ago, I have a company monitoring my data from the back end from my wearable ring. And he was telling me, holy cow, like, your HRV levels these days are absolutely off the charts. Your inflammation seems to be going down. You're doing really well. What are you doing differently? And what I'm doing differently is I'm taking care of my liver and my gallbladder right now. So at bedtime, I'm doing 2 of the liver complex. I'm doing 1 currently of the TUDCA, which I'm about to increase to 2. And I'm doing 1 capsule of ox bile, which I got that. I don't even have a resource for you. I would just encourage you to use one of the professional brands. When I get back to Toronto, I will look in my supplements drawer. Actually, it's not a drawer. I have a supplement pantry, if you can only imagine. And I'll look at the company that I'm using the ox bile from. But all of these supplements, and ox bile, all of these supplements, it is critically important, guys, to make sure that you're sourcing them from good companies. And, you can use the companies I use, or you can use different ones, but please make sure that you're using supplements that are well tested. There is so much junk out there. There's so much not tested, poorly produced, not clean supplements. We need to make sure that we're tapping into the right stuff. So that's my story. That's my rundown on Tudka. Hope that this was helpful. I mean, we've noticed that every time we talk about Tudka on Instagram, that community just eats it up and wants to hear more about it. And so hopefully you found this helpful. Let me know. And let me know what else you want me to do a deep dive on. Like I said, I'm going to be doing another dive on vitamin D3 because I just don't think we can talk about it enough. I'm thinking about doing one on melatonin. Let me know if that's something of interest. And if there's anything else, that you want to know about, you want me to dive in on, please let me know. Leave a comment either on Instagram, or on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know what you want me to dive in on, and I'll be happy to do it because at the end of the day, I'm just here to serve you. So thank you so much for joining me. You know the drill. If you get benefit from this episode, please make sure to share it out with anybody in your network that you think would also get benefit from it. And if you're feeling inspired today, please do leave us a review either on whatever platform that you're listening to the podcast on, whether it's Spotify or iTunes, anywhere, or any one of the other platforms that I'm not as familiar with. Please make sure that you leave us a review. Thank you so much for being here. Until we meet again, this is Nathalie Needham with the Longevity with Nathalie Needham podcast.